The Roman Empire promised their silver coins would never lose value. The Weimar Republic swore their marks were backed by gold. Zimbabwe's central bank guaranteed their dollar was as good as any currency in the world. Every single one of these currencies is now worthless. For over 2,000 years, governments have made the same promise. Our money is different. Our money is safe. And for over 2,000 years, history has proven them wrong. Not sometimes. Every single time. Today, we're told the same thing about our currency. But what if the pattern isn't broken? What if it's just our turn? The question isn't whether currencies die. The question is, will you see it coming? A currency is essentially a promise that this piece of paper, this number in your bank account, will hold its value. But promises can be broken, and throughout history, they always have been. Currency death isn't random. It follows the same pattern, whether we're talking about ancient Rome or modern Zimbabwe. Governments face a choice: honor their promises to savers, or break those promises to save themselves. They always choose to save themselves. In this video, you'll see three things. First, how this pattern has repeated across cultures and centuries. Second, why the same forces that killed currencies in the past are active today. And third, what people who survived these collapses understood that others didn't. Because the people who see the pattern early don't just survive, they thrive. For centuries, Roman denarii contained 98% pure silver. Citizens trusted these coins because they had real value, could melt them down, and still have silver. The currency was the empire. But Rome had a problem: endless wars and growing government costs. Soldiers needed pay, bureaucrats needed salaries, infrastructure needed funding, and the treasury was running empty. So Emperor Nero had an idea. Why not make coins with less silver? Citizens wouldn't notice a small change. He reduced silver content to 90%, then 80%, then 50%. Each emperor who followed did the same thing. By 270 AD, Roman silver coins contained just 5% silver. The result was catastrophic. Prices exploded. A measure of wheat that cost half a denarius in 200 AD cost 50 denarii by 270 AD. Citizens who had saved in Roman currency saw their wealth disappear. The economy collapsed into barter. People refused to accept Roman coins, but some people saw it coming. Wealthy Romans moved their wealth into land, gold, and foreign currencies. They understood that when governments are desperate, promises become worthless. These people didn't just survive the collapse. They bought assets from desperate sellers at bargain prices. After World War I, Germany owed massive debts, or reparations, reconstruction costs, social programs for veterans. The government had a choice: raise taxes massively, or print money to pay the bills. They chose to print. At first, it seemed manageable. A little inflation to stimulate the economy. But inflation became a monster that fed on itself. Prices doubled, then doubled again. Workers demanded higher wages. The government printed more money to pay them. Prices doubled again. By 1923, German families needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy bread. A postage stamp cost more than an entire building had cost 5 years earlier. Life savings became worthless overnight. Middle-class families found themselves destitute. But again, some people protected themselves. Those who borrowed money in marks and bought real assets, land, businesses, foreign currency, saw their debts become worthless while their assets held value. Farmers and craftsmen who produced real goods survived better than office workers with paper savings. Zimbabwe's government faced familiar pressures: land redistribution costs, military spending, social programs, and the same tempting solution: print money to fund it all. President Mugabe's government swore the Zimbabwe dollar was stable. They blamed price increases on speculators and foreign interference. They printed more money to fight inflation. The result was the same as always. Zimbabwe's inflation reached 231 million% annually. Our citizens needed billions of Zimbabwe dollars to buy a loaf of bread. The government eventually issued a $100 trillion note. It wasn't worth enough to buy a single egg. But once again, the pattern held. Zimbabweans who converted their savings to US dollars, gold, or foreign assets early kept their wealth. Those who trusted their government's promises lost everything. So what's the pattern? In every case, we see the same mechanism. Governments face more costs than they can cover through taxes. They choose to debase their currency rather than cut spending. And the people who hold that currency pay the price. Across 2,000 years, the pattern never changes. Governments always choose the same path when they're financially desperate. First, they promise their currency is backed by something real, silver, gold, or foreign reserves. Then, when they need more money than they have, they quietly reduce that backing. The currency looks the same, but it's been hollowed out. Second, they always blame someone else. Speculators, foreign enemies, market manipulation, anything except their own money printing. This misdirection buys them time while the currency dies slowly. Third, the process always accelerates. What starts as a small debasement becomes a flood. Governments discover that printing money is easier than making hard decisions. So they print more and more until the currency collapses entirely. Fourth, ordinary people always suffer most. They trust their government's promises. They keep their savings in the failing currency. They don't see the warning signs until it's too late. But the people who understand this pattern survive and thrive. They move their wealth out of promises and into reality before the collapse happens. Look around today and you'll see the same forces at work. In 2008, central banks worldwide began printing money on an unprecedented scale. They called it quantitative easing, but it's the same mechanism Rome used, creating new money to solve financial problems. The U.S. has printed more dollars in the last 15 years than in the previous 200 years combined. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet grew from $800 billion to over $8 trillion. European and Japanese central banks followed the same path. Just like Rome, just like Weimar, just like Zimbabwe, the response to financial pressure is always the same: create more money. And just like those historical examples, officials insist this time is different. This time, they can control it. But physics doesn't change. When you create more of something, each unit becomes worth less. In Rome, they shaved silver off coins. Today, they add digits to computer screens and call it stimulus. The technology is different. The result is the same. The warning signs are already visible. Housing prices have exploded. Food costs are rising. Basic goods cost more every year. Your salary doesn't buy what it used to. This isn't an accident. This is policy. History teaches clear lessons for anyone willing to listen. First, do not assume your currency will stay strong forever. Every currency in history has either died or lost most of its value. The dollar, euro, and yen are not magical exceptions to this rule. Second, understand that inflation is often a policy choice, not an economic accident. When governments need money they don't have, they take it from currency holders through inflation. This is a tax you never voted for. Third, real value sits in assets and skills, not in promises. Throughout history, land, precious metals, productive businesses, and useful skills have outlasted every paper currency. Bank balances are just claims on money that can be printed into worthlessness. Fourth, diversification across currencies and assets provides protection. People who survived currency collapses never kept all their wealth in one form or one country's promises. They spread risk. Fifth, pay attention to debt levels and money printing. These are the early warning signs. When governments can't fund themselves through normal means, they turn to currency debasement. The process has already begun. Sixth, develop skills that create value regardless of the currency system. Farmers, craftsmen, and entrepreneurs survived better than office workers during currency collapses because they produced real goods people needed. The lesson isn't to panic, it's to prepare. History shows this pattern clearly. The question is whether you'll learn from it. Currencies die because governments cannot resist the temptation to steal from the future to pay for today. It's not a conspiracy. It's simple math combined with political weakness, and it always ends the same way. The currency collapse isn't the disaster. Currency collapse is the moment when the disaster becomes visible. The real disaster is the years of debasement that led to that moment. The years when everyone believed the promises. History doesn't repeat exactly, but human nature never changes. Governments will always choose the easy path over the hard one. They will always break promises rather than break spending. Currencies will always eventually die. The only question is, will you be holding paper promises when the music stops, or will you be holding something real? If this gave you a new perspective on money and history, hit subscribe. The patterns are all there, hidden in plain sight.